Hey everybody. So, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on the Carolina Hurricanes asking if they were for real or not. And at the time, Carolina was off to a great start to the season. They were playing really well, and they were near the top of the Metropolitan Division, and they were a surprisingly good team at that point. But it was still early in the season, and teams get off to hot starts all the time and then easily fall back to earth. And I said that the next 7 games for the Hurricanes were going to be really telling if they were actually a really good team or if they just got off to a good start and are actually much closer to what we thought they would be at the beginning of the season, because they had a 3-game homestand and then a 4-game road trip. And those 7 games I thought would how they did would really set the tone for whether or not they were a legitimate playoff team in the East or if they just had a nice start to the year and are going to end up back being around a 500 hockey club. Well, those 7 games ended last night in Chicago. So, let's check in on the Hurricanes and see how they did over this stretch. And to be honest with you, it wasn't very good. If you look at what Carolina did during those 7 games, they started off with a 3-game homestand against the Sharks, Islanders, and Bruins. They won the first game against San Jose 4-3 in a shootout. Then they lost 2-1 to New York and 3-2 to Boston. So they beat the Sharks, and then they played 2 very close games with pretty good teams. But they lost both of those. So they go 1-2 on the 3-game homestand. Not really the greatest start. Not exactly what they were hoping to do. But then they go on a 4-game road trip, and they have a chance to possibly salvage this stretch if they have a good road trip. They start off with an overtime loss to Arizona 4-3, so they at least got a point out of it. Not terrible. Then they get shut out by Vegas 3-0. Not good. They get blasted by St. Louis 4-1. Not good. And then they do somewhat salvage the trip with a win last night in Chicago 4-3. So overall on that during that 7-game stretch, the homestand and road trip, they go 2-4-1 and get 5 out of a possible 14 points. That is not very good. And it brings their overall record right back to 500, which they were well above 500 before this stretch. They're now 7-7-2 on the season and 2 points out of a playoff spot in the East. I said that if Carolina could get 10 out of 14 points in this stretch, then I would start believing in them and think that they were actually probably a decent or good team. They got 5, half of those 10 points. So I am not sold on Carolina. I think this is much more reminiscent of what they actually are as a team rather than the hot start. I think they got off to a really nice start to the season. There are some really, really talented pieces there in Carolina. I think goaltending is definitely still an issue. I do not trust Scott Darling. I certainly don't trust Peter Mrazek. And I still think there are pieces missing with the Hurricanes. They have a nice defense. I think they're missing weapons up front. And there's still a lot of room for improvement in Carolina. And they really got people excited with the start to the year that they had, but now they've come right back to earth. And they're a struggling hockey team right now. And I think they're probably going to finish the year right around 500. So I think this 7-7-2 record is going to be percentage-wise about where they're going to be come the end of the season. I think they're about a 500 hockey team. So I think this is a more accurate representation of what the Hurricanes are, rather than the start to the season that they had. And I don't think they make the playoffs. There's some really, really good, talented pieces there. They're just not there yet. There's pieces missing, and I think they need better goaltending. So I don't think Scott Darling is going to be a grade A starting goaltender in the NHL, and I think they need a little more scoring power up front. They're a little missing a little bit. I like their defense. I think their defense core could be. They have the defense core that could be a defense core of a playoff team. Their 1 through 6 is fine on defense. Really, their 1 through 7 is fine on defense. They need goaltending. They need a real high-end starting goaltender, and they don't have that right now. And they need at least one, maybe two more goal scorers up front. Then I would look at Carolina and start to think, okay, maybe this is a team that could do something. Maybe this is a team that could win a round in the playoffs. But right now, with what they have right now, there's pieces missing. And I think that in a league that is as tight as the NHL, and where you have teams all right on top of each other for most of the season, Carolina is just not going to be able to beat out enough other teams to make the playoffs. So we're checking in on the Hurricanes, and they did not have a good 7-game stretch, which I thought was going to be a really important stretch for this season, and they didn't do it. So this is a team that I am not yet sold on, and I think that they're much closer to a 500 hockey team than to a first-place hockey team. So don't expect Carolina to make the playoffs this year. That's all I've got on that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support Off the Wall Hockey, Patreon link is also in the description. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.